Mayor Lazio.
Here.
Items on the consent agenda. Minutes from regular meeting number 25 on August 7th, 2018 as presented. Mayor's proclamation of Sunday, September 2nd, 2018 as Pastor Diane K. Koger Day. Appointment of John Olinger to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, term to expire 12/12/2019. Approve the Police Department promotion of Derek Shaw to Sergeant effective August 22nd, 2018. Consideration of acknowledgement settlement agreement between the City of Ottumwa and Ottumwa Grocery. Approve the purchase of new pre-built aluminum stairs from FS Industries in the amount of $6,425.91 for the Rochester Pump Station. Approve repair of one of the Elm Street Pump Station flight pumps by Electric Pump Company of Des Moines, Iowa in the amount of $9,828.84. Resolution number 164, 2018, setting September 4th, 2018 as the date of a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property located at 704 Center. Resolution number 165, 2018, setting September 4th, 2018 as the date of a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property located at 708 Center. Resolution number 202, 2018, setting September 4th, 2018 as the date of a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property, building number 37, located at 14504 Terminal Avenue at the Ottumwa Regional Airport. Cigarette permit application for Smokin' Hot LLC, special event at Bridgeview Center from 8/24 to 8/26, 2018. Beer and/or liquor applications for East End Hideout at 1141 Orchard Street, Ottumwa Elks Lodge number 347 at 413 South Iowa Avenue with outdoor service area, Pizza Hut of Ottumwa Fairfield Incorporated at 1247 Theater Drive, Ottumwa Golf and Social Club at 304 East Gulf Avenue with outdoor service area, Walmart Supercenter number 1285 at 1940 Venture Drive, all applications pending final inspections.
Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Your Honor, I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item B4 to be pulled out and tabled until the September 4th regular council meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, are you ready to vote? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes. Item C, we need an approval of tonight's agenda.
I make the motion to approve tonight's agenda with the removal of item F4.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Matt.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes. Okay. Item D on our agenda is the report from city officers, boards, commissions, and committees. So I'm going to turn to City Administrator Andy Morris and ask him to go through a number of items. So Andy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. The very first item you see is the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee meeting. If it's all right, I'd ask that, Mayor, you ask Kevin Flanagan, the city planner, to come to the podium and speak a little bit about our next steering committee meeting. As you can see, that's listed as August the 28th at Bridgeview.
Good evening, Kevin. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. We did have to change that date actually to September 6th at 5:30. It'll be our second meeting of our comprehensive planning group. And we'll have to make a couple of different decisions just initially, including what will be the initiative title. I think we're looking at Our Ottumwa 2030 as that possible title of our initiative. And we'll be getting a presentation from our consultants. And moving forward in our plan, we have a couple of members that we've added that missed our first meeting, but they'll be coming on. And we look forward to them being there, and we'll entertain any questions about it. I would want to point out that these are open meetings, and anyone's welcome to attend those meetings. But just need to, if we were going to have more than 2 council people there, we just need maybe a heads up so we could get that posted publicly. But
okay. Any questions for Kevin? Thank you, Kevin.
Thank
you.
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda, McClure Engineering, Ryan Davis is listed to discuss the traffic study on North Frontage Road and US 149.
I think we're going to recognize Sharon Stroh from Economic Development along with Ryan. So step to the microphone.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to tee this up just a little bit. As I mentioned in my community report a couple of weeks ago, Economic Development Office contracted with McClure Engineering to take a really big picture look at the intersection of North Court frontage and US 149. I also mentioned that Public Works did a micro look at the intersection, but we were looking for something that was broader, that covered the depth and breadth of what's around that in case we need to be using that intersection with a greater capacity with the advent of Helgerson Flats being certified. So I am going to let Ryan act as the mouthpiece for OEDC tonight, and he's going to present to you some concepts that they have determined are favorable for that particular area. I'll let him take over.
Good evening, Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. As Sharon just pointed out, McClure Engineering was asked to take a holistic view look on the potential Helgerson Flats certified site on top of the TEEP study that you'll hear later from your Public Works Director, focusing on the intersection on Iowa 149. So what we took a look at was we worked with OEDC to take a look at what potentially could that site consist of. And through conversations, you know, we kind of landed on the site could generate around and up to 50 additional heavy vehicle being generated from that facility. So what we would do is not only take a look at that facility, but everything else in that study area as well. And if I could get the study area map shown, that would be great. So as you can see, the area in the red there kind of represents the Helgerson Flats area. What we did was take a look at what other avenues or what other accesses could trucks be brought to that site, because as you'll find out later and from the TEEP study, the intersection with North Court and Iowa 149 is very troublesome with heavy vehicles. And I've got some video I'll show you in a little bit to visualize you with that. So when we broke everything down, like I stated, an additional up to 50 additional heavy vehicles, we really wanted to take a look at if the North Court intersection were to remain the same, how can we better access not only the Helgerson Flats area, but Dr. Pepper and all the other industrial uses within that area. So we took a look at whether or not Angle Road would be able to handle the capacity of all that. We quickly learned that would probably not be feasible just because of the one-lane bridge with the railroad. We had conversations with the railroad, and they started throwing out significantly large estimates on building new bridge to two-lane that and raise the height requirements on that for heavy vehicles. Another option that we looked at was actually a new interchange along 63 itself, right there on the curve with 120th there. But then we went back to the environmental assessment of when the bypass was actually put in, and due to some really heavy regulations that was kind of thrown out at the very beginning as well through our conversations with the DOT. Another access point that we considered was to take Angle Road down to the Dahlonega existing interchange. That was something that was considered, but again, kind of we wavered off of that due to the residential usage of that road to the east from where the Helgerson Flats area is. So that really kind of brought us back to the North Court intersection. And if I could tee up a couple of the videos, you can do them in any order that you want. So on September last year, we put up cameras and we recorded vehicle movements for 24 hours and really witnessed a few of some troubling videos. And as you can see, this southbound truck is trying to make this hairpoint turn into the development, and a following vehicle kind of is trying to weave his way. And this truck that's trying to make this movement had to wait for another vehicle coming off of that frontage road before he could even move. And as you can see, there's no stop sign there. There's no signal there. So if that through movement happened even a hair to 15 seconds earlier, we could have had a potential accident there. This is another example. So a different truck here, different time, is trying to make the same movement, but a bus is sitting there. This truck can't make that movement because the bus is in the way, and it's inching that bus further into the intersection, and he can't see around the back of that truck until he inched out and he sees that he has a free movement there, as you can see there. And then this last video here that we'll have kind of demonstrates just the weaving of these smaller vehicles as to how this main intersection kind of works with that frontage road. So what we kind of took a look at is how to make the entrance into this industrial site more accessible, more safe to the environment of what the usage is heavy vehicles. So one of the options that we took a look at were if we were to extend Fox Sock Road into Iowa 149 existing from where it's at, and I believe that's the PDF labeled turning movements. Yep, so what you're seeing here is instead of heavy vehicles utilizing the North Court frontage road, we would extend Fox Sock Road into Iowa 149. There is a slight elevation difference between Iowa 149 and Fox Sock there, which we ran into issues with some sight distances for the heavy vehicles being able to make a left-hand or a westbound left-hand turn. So heading out of the industrial center, wanting to go south, we would have to not allow that movement just because of sight distance with the hill going up there, going up and over the railroad. So the alternative there is to really limit the left-hand turns there, extend a median through there so there's only a left in from Iowa 149 into the industrial center, but you wouldn't be able to make a left out. So that was one option that we took a look at. The other option that we took a look at, and I won't show you a visual for this because the TEEP report shows a good example of the turning movements at the existing intersection. But if the existing intersection were to be left in place, could we widen out that intersection to help with the heavy vehicles? And again, later on, the Public Works Director will kind of present that from the TEEP report. So another thing that we took a look at was a really high level, very conceptual alternative is to how do we safely move these heavy vehicles in and out of the area? Well, how do you do that? Well, you don't make them make hairpoint turns or 180 degree turns. And so if you can go to the alternative, that is the 2018 one. Yep, that one. So again, this is a very high level conceptual view. I do want to emphasize we have not talked to any businesses. We have not talked to residents or parcel owners on this at all. What we really wanted to focus in on was how do you safely get heavy vehicles in and out of the industrial area. So what this concept shows is we would relocate the existing North Court intersection approximately 200 feet to the south. And that would put that intersection right in between McGregor's and the Tractor Supply Company. And what you're seeing here, so in the magenta color is the new roadway utilizing the southern portion of the Tractor Supply parking lot to have a right angle 90 degree turn for those heavy vehicle movements to safely make. And so that roadway would then proceed east into Rochester, Our concept doesn't show this on this, but what we would propose would be to cul-de-sac Rochester to prevent any of the heavy vehicles for utilizing that roadway. Oh, yeah, sorry, Oak Meadow, my apologies, yep. Rochester's to the south with the signal, my apologies. Yeah, Oak Meadow, we would cul-de-sac Oak Meadow there so the heavy vehicles wouldn't be able to utilize that. And then on the western side of the intersection, we don't want to cut off all the businesses on that side of the roadway. So we would then relocate and push further the frontage road there. We would eliminate the existing frontage road in front of the National Guard there to eliminate those hair point turns and force those heavy vehicles down to that intersection. Now, when we took a look at, and when we conducted those videos, we also we conducted counts, and through the analysis that we conducted of the existing traffic that we counted and projected vehicles in this area, signal warrants they're not warranted basically through analysis.
Ryan, could you clarify that when you say signal warrants? What does that really mean for the layperson?
Yeah, so anytime a proposed signal there's not a signal at an intersection, and there's a question on whether or not a signal is wanted or needed, usually a warrant analysis is conducted, and that's generally, so there's 10 different warrants, and I can go into specifics if you want to, but generally it's based off of the through movement on the heavy major movement and then the minor conflicting movements as well. So it's generally based off of how much traffic is moving through that intersection, and there's certain guidelines put forth to meet those warrants.
Would those be state standards kinds of things then too? I mean, that would
They're
not just
national-
apply to
national
Ottumwa.
standards.
National standards. Thank you.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Yep, they're put forth by the federal highway.
Okay.
Yep. So again, we really didn't see the need. The warrant really wasn't met, and that's all conducted in our study. And again, looking, I showed you the video of some of the troublesome movements, and as the TEEP report presented from that will be presented by the Public Works Director later, the crash rate at that intersection really isn't too terribly high. But in our discussions with the city of Ottumwa and the DOT, I think we all realize that it has the potential to be very impactful, especially with a lot of heavy vehicles traveling through that intersection. So at this time, our report is here, just a very high 50,000-foot conceptual view as to what we perceive as how to not only make the existing intersection more safe, but how to also grow the community as well, and having more inviting route to your proposed industrial area.
Any questions for Ryan from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, council members have a question. I'll defer to them.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Davis, just one question. When you mentioned cul-de-sacing and that being one of the options then on the highway, you would put that into context, if you would, as opposed to roundabouts.
So again, when I said cul-de-sac, I was meaning on Oak Meadow. So Oak Meadow is currently a north-south roadway that connects Foxsock to Rochester, right? And it's a mainly residential street. With this alternative that we're presenting here, oh, sorry.
I don't know if it'll show up or not. Yeah, it's not going to show up very well. It's right there.
There you go.
The purpose of that is to try to cut off the heavy traffic from coming back through the residential and then coming up on
Rochester.
Also in residential areas. So that was a way to try to isolate industrial, commercial.
Yeah. I know in previous discussions, we kind of showed a roundabout option, but that was quickly thrown out as not being feasible on 149.
That's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
And perhaps maybe Sharon's the best person to answer this. Could you explain to the public the importance of this particular intersection as it pertains to our work with the Ottumwa Economic Development Corp and Alliant Energy's work with the site certification out at the Helgerson Flats area?
Well, the certified site is just east of this.
Right.
The existing intersection is the only way in and out of this piece of property at this time. And as Ryan mentioned, with the advent of more business coming into the 82 acres that are being certified, it's possible that there could be another 50 trucks every day in and out of an already congested area. We have heard feedback from our existing businesses that are already out there. And I think you said Dr. Pepper, but it's really Plastipack who produces the bottles to deliver to Dr. Pepper. And they have told us already on a number of occasions that this is creating a great deal of heartache to them, for lack of a better term. It's already congested. It's a bottleneck issue, and it's reaching critical mass. So there are going to be some difficulties with meeting the needs of our existing business base if we don't look at addressing this intersection. I failed to mention earlier, there are some folks in the audience that can back me up here. I've got a DOT representative that's here that's can certainly add to the conversation if necessary. But DOT brought it to our attention, OEDC's attention, very early in this game when we announced Helgerson Flats, that's an intersection that's probably going to demand some attention. So the task force that's been looking at this and has brought these alternatives to us have included city and county representatives, DOT, Area 15, and OEDC. So it's been a collaborative effort.
But it is fair to say that it is possible that intersection could play a big role in whether or not we get a particular business, if there's going to be trouble getting their vehicles or their shipments into their site. It's
absolutely critical depending on what the truck capacity is for the new industry. It'll be one thing if it's a data center that's mostly processing and very few people that are going to be working there. It'll be yet another if it's going to be a warehouse or a logistics staging area.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Sharon, I got a quick question.
Sure.
Obviously, and thanks for the presentation. That's a good presentation for us to see what's going on out there. I know that's been an issue for a long time, that intersection. Just real quick, I think what Mark was asking too, just to clarify that, the site certification, does it obviously hinge on whether this is taken care of or not?
Actually, it's not a requirement of site selection, but we know that it will impact what happens to the development of those 82 acres if we don't address the intersection.
Sure, absolutely, obviously. Yep, thanks.
But it doesn't hinge on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Ryan. That was a good overview. Item 3, Andy, do you want me to set that up, or are you going to?
Yeah, Mayor, I'll go ahead and have you take care of that.
Tim Richmond is in the audience, and Tim, I'd ask you to come forth and identify yourself. Tim is the Emergency Management Coordinator who resides here in Wapello County, and the commission is a Wapello County commission. So you were, and the reason we asked him to come to the meeting tonight, in light of the recent tornado in Pella and Bondurant and a few other places, Marshalltown, Tim was actively involved with the Vermeer plant in Pella, had some firsthand experience, and I think for our council, I'd like to have him come back at a meeting and maybe a work session and do an in-depth, how do we work with you as a major city if we were to have some type of a natural disaster or chemical disaster or train derailment or whatever it might be. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about some of the handouts you brought to the council?
First of all, I'll apologize for not being here sooner. I started in March of 2017, and poof, 18 months is gone, and I'm not sure where they went. There's been a lot to do. There's a lot of components to emergency management. I'll try and give you a high-level view tonight, and that's the color handouts I gave you. And I've tried to develop a good elevator speech, which I don't think I've honed in on yet, because everybody asks, well, what is emergency management? Are you in charge of all the guys running around lights and sirens? Well, no, I'm not. That's not my job to manage them. They know what they're doing. It's one analogy I've heard used is if you think of our communities as an orchestra in a time of disaster, I don't need to tell each of those musicians how to play their instrument, but when we're all together, we need some coordination and collaboration. And that's pretty much what emergency management's all about, is coordinating all those different pieces of the community to work together in harmony in those times of disaster. So, gray skies will fall in our community from time to time, whether that's a natural disaster, a man-made disaster, or a terrorist event. And what's really key for our community's sustainability is how we respond to those. And there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes in a lot of different entities and parts of our community. So what is emergency management? It's the managerial function charged with creating the framework within our communities to reduce that vulnerability to hazards and cope with disasters. So disasters come in all shapes and sizes. They can be the simple everyday things that we deal with, from a house fire to a traffic accident, or it could be the grand scale things like the tornado or a hazmat chemical spill or a terrorist attack. A little bit about emergency management, how it's structured here for us locally. That's kind of the blue and yellow handout I gave you. So emergency management was created as an entity in Iowa Code 29C, and it's an independent municipality is how it actually is in Iowa Code. So what does that mean? And it's very confusing to a lot of folks. So it's an independent body created by that code, and sits as a commission where a representative from each of the political jurisdictions in our county resides. So that's all of our mayors, a representative of the Board of Supervisors, and our elected sheriff. And it's the thought that those chief elected officials, whom are in charge in times of disaster, as a collaborative body, all of us can work on our core capabilities. And that's what we really fall back on in those times of disaster. Those core capabilities are represented in your second blue box here, where it talks about hazard analysis, resource management, planning, control coordination, damage assessment, communication and warning, training exercises, those types of things. So the everyday things that we work on are training, planning, and exercise. You'll hear us talk a lot about that when we talk about mitigation planning, preparedness, response, and recovery. If we fail to plan, we plan to fail, is a common quote. And so every day we work on developing our core capabilities within the different aspects of the community that we reside. I'll hone in a little bit on planning, because that's a lot of what we do in emergency management, is developing plans. And it's those plans that we train on, and then we exercise, and we learn where our strengths and weaknesses are, and then we start the cycle all again. And it's a constant cycle of that. So at some point, I'll ask all of you to participate in that training and exercise process, where we need to bring you in and train you on what your responsibilities and roles are as elected officials. And then we'll plan some drills, or we'll drill some of those capabilities. We'll throw out some scenarios. We'll see how good we are at it, and then we'll do it all over again. At the bottom of your page, you'll notice another blue box that talks a lot about the planning. So the local comprehensive emergency plans, it's a great big document. It's not a lot of fun to read, but there's many different parts to it. We address emergencies as an all hazards approach is our model now. Years ago, we used to create a plan for each type of response, and it was horribly inefficient to do it that way. And then we changed and we adopted the current model, which is an all hazards approach. So we have a basic plan that kind of outlines how we respond to all types of emergencies. And then in addendum to that plan, there's emergency support functions that specifically address those topic areas and those core capabilities. And that's what's outlined here. So there's 15, what we call ESFs, or emergency support functions, and each of them has a specific topic area. Each of these ESFs also has an associated group within our community that I work with that's their area of expertise. Just to call out some specifics for examples. ESF2 communications, there's a 911 board that meets and provides funding for our dispatch centers, and they use phone surtax monies for that. ESF4 for firefighting, we have a mutual aid association that meets every quarter that's made up of our fire and EMS groups, and they're always working on projects to improve their core capabilities. ESF8, I work with a local county and a regional healthcare coalition that's made up of all of our healthcare entities, from the hospital to clinics to long-term care facilities. And those are just three examples. But I can give you an example of those type of collaborative groups that are associated with each of those ESFs. So there's a lot going on all the time. There's a lot of different groups to meet with, a lot of different coordination and collaboration, and lots of opportunity. that's a lot in a nutshell. Any questions? I
Any
can answer?
questions for Tim? And I think we meet as needed, and there are always lively discussions. We have the 7 mayors from around the area, and then the sheriff and a county supervisor. And Tim does a great job for us. And I think it's important to recognize that if we don't have this coordination and we have some type of a disaster or problem, if we don't work through his office, we're not eligible for state and federal resources. And I think that's the key. And we heard that recently. And Andy and I had the chance to hear that from the mayor of Marshalltown last Friday. So we'll have you come back and go into more detail, because there's an awful lot in this. But we need to understand our role in that, and how our community would respond if we had a train derailment, for example. So, okay.
You had mentioned the tornado in Pella, and it was by a lot of luck that I was able to participate in that. This summer, I've taken the opportunity to advance my education beyond the basic things I needed to complete in the first 2 years by enrolling in a FEMA Basic Academy. It's normally one that we spend a month in Emmitsburg, Maryland, but they decided to bring it out to the regions, and we were able to do it at DMAC in Des Moines. So that was a unique opportunity to decide to take advantage of. So there were a group of us in Des Moines that week, about 15 emergency managers from across the state. And as we're winding down in class that afternoon, we get news of the tornadoes. And so what do we do? Like most islands, we hear of it, we run outside and look and see what's going on. And so we couldn't see much from our vantage point because it was clear in our spot in Des Moines, but we get online and we start hearing the reports first from Bondurant, and then we hear it heading other places. And so as we disperse, the group broke up into 3 groups and went those 3 different places to help out. And so on my way back to our county, and of course I was on the phone with our dispatch saying, what's it look like for our county? That's first priority. I'm headed here. They're telling me now it looks like the storm's not going to track our way. I said, okay, so I'm going to go check in Pella and see if they need any help. Call me if anything changes at home. So it was very quickly that I got pulled in to fulfill a role in that incident and was able to be their scribe in their incident command post all night. Great learning opportunity for me to see that in action in somebody else's community, and quite a few takeaways from that. And so it'll be a valuable experience to share. One of the first things that I asked every mayor what their primary concern as far as hazards in the community was, and the mayor is very concerned about the rail. And we did complete 2 weekends ago, I believe it was, a specific 4-hour class with the Amtrak emergency management and police. And that was quite interesting, quite eye-opening. And we may do that again, but we have a lot of different things going with several different railroads as far as developing core capabilities. The fire department has, and the SERG hazmat team has teamed up with the CP Rail to increase some capabilities in response, and there'll be more training to go along with that. We've had a lot of conversations lately in our emergency management region, and we reference a lot the recent active shooter event in our community and the response from that. And we get so busy in our individual worlds and our kind of our silos, and we sometimes don't see big picture, and we get wrapped up in our own departments, personnel shortages and our budget constraints and those kinds of things. But one of the things we like to talk about is think bigger when we're planning and exercising and drilling. Think bigger beyond our normal borders. I like to say, I'll go out on a limb and say, sometimes jurisdictional boundaries are for budget purposes, but when the real stuff hits the fan, look what happens. We had officers from all around the state, and that's not an uncommon response. And I think that's something that we all can be proud of as Iowans, and I think is common. So there's a lot of planning and drilling going on in the regional concept. It's stuff we work on all the time in healthcare coalitions, and it's been a push in the recent years. It's not been without its pains because it takes time and commitment and effort, and that's sometimes painful when there's a lot pulling on you every day. So the key message here is it's worth all those pains and efforts to collaborate and take the time out of the already busy schedule that's overtaxing you, so that when we do need to pull together collaborative resources, it flows flawlessly.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. We'll have you back another time. Andy, are you going to talk about
Yes.
deer management?
Yes, Mayor, the next item is listed. You see item number 4, deer management hunting within the city limits. I believe Councilman Stevens put that on the agenda, but Mayor, with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, I think the concern is that we need to have some discussion about how we want to deal with hunting in the city limits, and we do have some policy about that. So, Chief, are you prepared to make any comments or give us some direction on that? And we're not making a decision tonight, but just want to hear some ideas.
No, I don't know anything about this. I believe Councilman Stevens wanted to talk about this. So
Are there any questions then we can direct then to the chief? We're talking about shooting deer in city limits.
I think from what I'm hearing from a citizen, and I think that citizen is in the audience, is maybe we need to look at the distance from dwellings that they're allowed and some different things like that. I would suggest that we call Cam forward and let him explain what he was talking about.
Good evening, Cam. Identify yourself and we'll.
I'm Cam Reeves, 2543 North Green Street here in Ottumwa. A couple of my concerns are safety related. One is I would like to see hunters, since they're hunting in the city limits, they're hunting up in tree stands or trees. So I would like to see if they are part of the community that's going to hunt in the city limits, that they wear blaze orange. This would let neighbors know that they are in the trees. It's just easier to see them. If you have a lot of kids, and there are a lot of kids in the neighborhood where I live, it might be a signal for parents to keep their kids inside while people are out hunting, keep dogs inside. Second issue I'd like to see, again, for safety, and also for people that don't want someone hunting next to their backyards, is to have people that are adjoining neighbors to the property where they want to hunt to have to give permission. So if you have neighbors on either side and those neighbors are not happy that there are people hunting next to their property, that they would have to give permission for that to happen. I know we've had discussions before. I know some people do not want people hunting in their backyards or next to them, and I'm sure a lot of people just don't care. I know that the deer herd needs to be managed, population of the deer in the city limits. So I'm not opposed to hunting. I'm not particularly wild about people hunting next to my property. So.
Any questions, comments?
I got a quick question, Chief. Is there a requirement for blaze orange to be used in tree stands or from ground blinds inside the city limits? I don't recall. I know you just sent out a news release on that, and I read it, but I don't remember that being a requirement.
no, there's no requirement.
Okay. And is there a requirement for the adjoining property owners? I think there is for the property owners, isn't there? Or is there anything for adjoining property owners?
If you're going to hunt on someone's property,
You have to have permission, but not for adjoining property owners.
No, there's no nothing in the code that says that you have to have permission from everyone around you.
You're right. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Cam. We'll certainly take this under advisement and talk to our staff about it. Andy, who's doing the roundabouts? Is that Larry?
Yeah, Larry will provide an update on the roundabouts.
Good evening, Larry. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This project has generated a lot of interest. I had a request maybe just to give a quick update. A lot of this is a repeat from previous presentations, but we did get a current aerial view for you could see where they're at. See if this works. How about that? This is what I said, it kind of just covers what the funding was for this particular intersection. As you can see, this is the prior to construction start. This is with the first phase removed. This is one of the longer phases just because of the underground work. There's quite a bit of pipe work that starts down in the lagoon area, comes all the way up through as far as for the storm system. This storm system collects and picks up this area, including quite a bit of the storm toward the school system. They have started. Let's see here. You can see where they have put in some of the curb sections now. They'll come through because of the shape, put in all the curb, then they'll fill in with the center sections. All I wanted to do here was kind of point out some of the pipe system that's underground. A lot of times people don't understand that is the time that it takes. I wanted to point out that there was a lot of CMP in this storm system. When we got into it, a lot of it had scouring to where it had rusted through. This pipe system would have had to been replaced probably in the next 5 years, regardless if the construction of the roundabout occurred or not. Again, that's just another shot of stuff they've taken out. It is on schedule. It is moving along quite well. I've had a lot of compliments from the mini roundabout. So that's kind of where we're at. I did want to point out that pipe would have been replaced, and it's a little over $50,000 would have been done regardless of this project on top of a signal project.
Okay, any questions for Larry? Thank you, Larry. We'll appreciate having updates periodically on that. Andy, the next one is yours.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the next item you see, item number 6, the community meeting, that's set up for August the 30th. That will be at the Knights of Columbus Hall from 6 to 7. This will be our second community meeting of the year, and plan to have one more before the conclusion of the calendar year. The next item, Mayor, I'll just migrate to that one. The Make Ottumwa Shine canvas. As some of you may or may not remember, an item I mentioned in the weekly report. On August the 8th, there were members of the Make Ottumwa Shine Committee. Councilmember Stevens accompanied us as well, as did Councilwoman Holly Berg. And we had staff from City Hall attend to that and looked at various and sundry parts of town that, quite frankly, are challenged. And one of the items that Councilwoman Berg brought forward was try to undertake some beautification efforts at the east and west end of the city. I had a brief meeting this past Friday afternoon, with some of you may recall Alicia Hauk and the work that she's done on behalf of the community. And we outlined some areas that may be subject to improvement, enhancement, so we can make those approaches a little bit more salable. She will undertake some efforts, but again, she somewhat has her hands full, so I don't want to set a deadline for her right now, particularly when we're being filmed. But she will move in that direction to start beautifying that. All I asked her was that set forth some plans, and then let certainly staff and the folks on the Make Ottumwa Shine Committee have a look-see at those before she proceeds. But I would anticipate, based on our conversation, probably looking at spring of 19. The last item you'll note, Mayor, Brett Douglas from Genus Architects is with us here this evening to talk about the streetscape program. And with that, I'll turn it over to you for the introductions.
Okay. Brett, if you would like to step to the microphone and give us an update on the streetscape, we'd appreciate that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you very much for your time. Brett Douglas, Genus Landscape Architects from Des Moines. Just have a quick update for you this evening, and happy to have a discussion and answer any questions. I think most people know the CDBG Community Facilities Grant was awarded in full, so $800,000 given towards the project that largely focuses on stormwater improvements and water quality. Thank you for everybody that's been helpful in that grant process, in particular Area 15. Put forth a lot of work to make a successful application. Plan remains the same. Our next step, we met this morning, Public Works Director and Iowa Department of Agricultural Land Services, Amy Bauska. We had our kickoff meeting to talk about the water quality improvements. Our next step is to look at their requirements as part of that grant and see how the design folds into those requirements. So we'll be doing that in the next week. Market and Green Street upgrades, that's something that has been relatively new in the project in the last 6 weeks. We are looking at the possibility of parking modifications on Market and or Green, specifically on Market Street by the bus transit stop. The intent right now is for the transit stop to remain in place, and that would be the structure that is out there now, but to eliminate the bus queuing that happens in that specific location. So it would still remain as a stop, but queuing or transit would queue in the street or park on the street. So we wouldn't be doing away with that. And that is also being looked at to address some of the comments and concerns we've had from stakeholders relative to parking quantities and parking locations. Also of note, something we've heard from folks, we have a lot of surface parking in downtown Ottumwa, and I think most and large agree that we can be doing better in terms of how we sign people to get to that parking, how to find that parking. And I think that's particularly important as we approach a potential construction season for the streetscape projects. So now is that time to start thinking about where we place signage and how we get folks there so we're not waiting or doing something post-construction. A little bit on the parking analysis. Here's where we stand as of the current plans. Existing parking through the district in these 3 blocks is around 95. Proposed parking sits at 96 if we make the proposed modifications on Market Street. So we're looking, if you see that 7 on Market, different laser pointer here, right here. So if we look at some head-in spaces right north of the transit stop, we can get those numbers up to be just 1 over what we are today. And the area that we lose is the same as we've just discussed before in the 200 block and the conversion from head-in parking to parallel. And then as you can see in the green, we're approximately 449 spaces around this immediate area for surface parking lots and the parking structure north of Canteen. Existing plan and section, as you all know it today, we have parallel parking across the project area with the exception of the 200 block where we have head-in parking. So our sidewalk section looks something like this. The proposed plan is to convert all 3 blocks for consistency. This is really a vision plan. So this is really looking at things 30, 40, 50 years out. So how do we improve the main street, something in a very sustainable and durable way? We'd like the idea of that consistency across the 3 blocks. With that change to parallel parking, we improve safety, but we also, the big win with that is we get an amenity zone. So by that, I mean, we get wider sidewalks for pedestrians. We get another 5 to 6 feet of zone here where we can achieve tree plantings. We can't do that in the same way if we have the head-in parking on the 200 block. And this brick paver zone as shown, that's a nice area for whether it's seating or cafes or signage for shops that are having sales, what have you. A lot of flexibility with that plan. And we've talked about this precedent previously. This sidewalk section, coincidentally, is very, very similar to the sidewalk outside of my office in East Village in Des Moines. This image up here is almost identical to what Ottumwa would have in this plan for a sidewalk section. And that also has parallel parking. In terms of stakeholder input process, it's been a long journey. We started the 1st of 2015 with this project and the vision plan. We've had several larger forum public meetings, including this summer presenting to a large group at Rotary. We had 3 business stakeholder meetings on June 12th this year and have subsequently met with focus groups in the 200 block because that is the block where we've had some concerns. The area highlighted in blue are the stakeholders that we have documented, that I have documented on record, that have attended these public input sessions. So I think we've done a pretty good job of reaching out and making connections with most in the study area. Many of those that aren't highlighted are a single owner or a couple of them are vacant. In terms of what we've heard, majority of the input has been positive. The input that has not been positive has been focused in the 200 block. Largely on the south side of the 200 block, we have a handful or less of stakeholders that have voiced concern over the removal of head-in angle parking. our summary of the specific concerns, removal of handicap parking and proximity to businesses. So we have a few folks there that have aged users, and they know they have handicap spaces that are head-in parking close to their businesses. They would lose the quantity in the parallel parking concept. Removal of quick in-out head-in parking. That's specific to Top Hat and their cafe. Their business model is designed, in their words, around head-in parking. And then the loss of dedicated parking spaces for second floor residents. So we have had, actually that same owner is planning 2 or 3, I believe, private residences above the restaurant, and had in their minds conceived of on-street parking as a dedicated parking space for residents. We have heard a number of requests for improved parking signage that I mentioned earlier, and concerns regarding construction process. And that's really where we're hoping to turn our energy beyond documentation process for the project, but building communication with the stakeholders. Those folks that are behind the plan are really starting to ask questions about the communication process, how we weather this storm, any type of what's the closures, what's the phasing, what's the timing, and all those are valid and very typical and real concerns. As part of this process, we would have multiple meetings with them, understanding all of their concerns and putting together a phasing strategy that hopefully addresses most of them, if not all. Additionally, a really nice bonus to this project, Main Street Ottumwa has been in collaboration with IEDA at state level, and Main Street is putting together a couple of assistance workshops that would take place later this fall for all business stakeholders to help them understand what needs to be done. A little bit in terms of the parking, this is building on, this is information from Area 15 and their recently completed downtown parking study. This here is really customers indicated willingness to walk further to their destination than business owners feel they would or should walk. So I think that's important as we look about quantities of parking and proximity of parking. Our goal here is to create a destination. Yes, we want to get parking close to the businesses, but we also want to create a downtown that people are willing to walk more than 50 feet to get to a shop. If I translate that geographically to downtown Ottumwa, what does that mean? It means if this is the center of our 200 block right here, it means that 84% of those surveyed are willing to walk up to a block to get to a business, and 50% of those are willing to walk up to 2 blocks. So put it in perspective, downtown Ottumwa is relatively small. So, and we can get 50% of those folks willing to walk a couple of blocks. A couple of blocks takes you a long ways in downtown. And I think all of our 449 parking spaces that were identified previously are within that 2-block radius. Project cost opinion. We have not changed this since we last got together. We will be doing a review of that estimate here in the upcoming weeks. We plan to have that complete mid-September. That will largely tie in with, depend on what we find on the water quality evaluation. And then we'll also have some numbers on those side street improvements for consideration.
Mr. Mayor, just one question, Brett. If you could go back to that slide, or the following one is fine. My understanding is there was, that the one that we did not win out on was the community facilities grant. Is that correct? Because there's that and there's the community development block grant, the 2 of the funding components. I thought one of them fell out.
The water sewer community development block grant did not get funded. The water, the community facilities community development block grant did get funded.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
So as we look at the cost share framework that we've seen previously, numbers are the same with the exception of I have removed that CDBG water and sewer grant funding because we did not receive those monies. I would encourage us at this time to leave these dollars where they sit in terms of placeholders, and then evaluate that this fall as we get some new numbers back and the design is updated. In terms of where we're at in the process, we're about midway through, or not. It's been a long planning process. We are hoping, if everything moves forward, the intent is to have bid documents ready to bid this winter, have a contractor selected in February, and start construction in April, May of 19. We're anticipating a 2-year construction cycle. So everything going smoothly, November 2020 we'd have a completed 3-block project and ribbon cutting and a grand celebration. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Brett? Good update, and good to keep those numbers in front of us and a timeline in front of us too.
Real quick, I just want to make sure so the public knows. Could you clarify on the Market and Green Streets about the parking and how that evolved due to the concerns of the business owners in the 200 block?
Absolutely. One of the things we heard was, which I think I touched on, but it was really about getting diversity of parking opportunities downtown, right? So if we're going to lose head-in parking, there are people out there that frankly just prefer head-in angle parking. And we lose that in that 200 block. And we have an opportunity to add some of that back into the downtown core with modifications to Market Street and Green.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much, Brett. We'll move to item E. I don't think I received any comments for any item on the agenda. So let's go to F.
Bid review and award contract for asbestos removal, water service abandonment, and demolition of 1010 West 2nd Street. Recommendation, award the contract for asbestos removal, water service abandonment, and demolition of 1010 West 2nd Street to Dan Larson in the amount of $35,900.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Good evening, Jody. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The city accepted bids for this project until 2 o'clock August 14th, and we received 3 bids. Mr. Larson submitted the best bid in the amount of $35,900 for all 3 parts of the project: asbestos removal, water service abandonment, and demolition. And we recommend you accept his bid and award him the contract.
I previously asked you this question, Jody, so this is not new, but it seemed a little high compared to some of the other estimates you've brought before the council. Would you just share the same answer you gave me before?
There is a lot of asbestos in this project. The exterior of the building is covered in it, and so that's going to increase the cost.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. I noticed in these you don't list the sewer abandonment.
The sewer abandonment, we're capping the sewers, and we required as part of the contract, and the building inspectors have to observe it, but
Okay.
we don't put it in as a separate line item.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Bid review and award contract for asbestos removal, water service abandonment, and demolition of the structures on Lot 56, Block 2 of Harding Park Addition, also known as 919 South Hancock. Recommendation, award the contract for the asbestos removal, water service abandonment, and demolition of 919 South Hancock to Weston McKee of McKee Construction and Abatement in the amount of $16,400.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jody.
We also accepted bids until August 14th at 2 o'clock for this one. And 3 bids were received, and Mr. McKee was the best bidder. And we recommend accepting his bid and awarding him the contract. I'll also mention that during the Make Ottumwa Shine canvas, this property was one of the ones that the people on the tour saw. And I think everybody on the bus admitted that they thought that this property should be removed.
Any questions for Jody? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Review recommendations from the Teep Highway 149 and Fox Oak Road study conducted by H.R. Green for the city of Ottumwa. Recommendation, review study and continue implementation of short-term improvements as recommended in the Teep Highway 149 and Fox Oak Road study pending funding.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented, Your Honor.
Second.
Thank you. Good evening, Larry. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. As kind of was described by Ryan Davis, this is an overlapping study that was implemented to address a more immediate concern in the localized intersection. What we did was take advantage of a grant program that the DOT offers, which provides up to 100 hours of traffic engineering services at their cost. There's a process they go through to retain these engineering firms. So the city did request assistance from the Iowa DOT on June of 2017, utilizing the TEEP grant and identify possible cost-effective traffic safety and operational improvements at the intersection of Fox Sock and 149. The study was intended to review both the growing conception of a major safety concern from recent accidents and current and future truck traffic impacts from recent developments and an ongoing expansion of the Helgeson Flats Industrial Park by OEDC. And again, you're fully aware that they commissioned a separate study that had overlapping higher altitude view. There's many aspects. I'm just going to touch on a few of them throughout the study that they look at to understand or fully understand and best determine traffic flows and needs. The study reviewed intersection capacity, which compares level of service between signalized and unsignalized intersections. The core comparison is rated on time delays and traffic flows and turning movements and some other considerations. What was done under this loss of service comparison or study, everything was rated as C or better, which means it's acceptable. And there's a lot of detailed information that you're welcome to read in the report that goes into these type of studies and determinations. And basically Ryan touched on that. One of the first things we wanted to do based on citizens' concerns was look at would a signalized intersection at that intersection help the concerns. It didn't meet any of the warrants as was stated, and what that means to us. Even if we wanted to take the money and invest it local funds only, it wouldn't be permitted through DOT as far as installing it. They look at many other factors. I guess in summary, and like I said, I'll make the report available to everybody. We've already made, the DOT made several of the short-term improvements, the sign relocations. We've done some pavement markings, some other stuff. We looked at and have come up with some initial budgets for just from an operational standpoint, pavement improvements, meaning replace what's there, widen it, pave the truck drag lanes. But one of the things that we're recommending is to continue looking at like McClure's study and see if that's something we want to do. Do we want to invest, somewhere around $250,000 in pavement replacement, which will help the operation, but does not help actual safety at that intersection. So I mean, we'd probably want to come back at an actual work session, lay out things in a more detailed method along with the cost. The solution that they come up with is probably a better overall solution, but what we're probably going to encounter is a funding issue when you look at the total targeted budget, which I think was right around 5.5 roughly. So there's a lot more work to be done. What we wanted to do was come up with some short-term improvements, which we've done.
Okay, any questions for Larry?
Larry, was that $5.5 million for that entire project?
Right. The ultimate design would be about 5.5 if you wanted to create an additional intersection that Ryan had put up just south of the current one, including the frontage road that cuts over to Oak Meadow. Ultimately, that would be the solution, but is it warranted at this time? That's something that we'd have to determine. What we did do was a short aerial drone just to kind of give you an idea what the overhead looks like. You can see that intersection moves a lot of traffic relatively quick, according to this video. And you can see the tracking of the semis. What we were looking at is, does it make sense? And we haven't made that determination yet. Do you do some drainage improvements through this area? Do you widen this throat? Do you pave these shoulders? The pavement's in, deteriorating condition. That is yet to be determined, because we wouldn't really want to do this work if we're truly looking at adding access down in this area. But we haven't come to that conclusion yet. I mean, based on just the overall project cost.
Okay.
That is a very brief overview.
And Larry, is it safe to say that you're working closely with DOT on this?
Yeah, we've worked with Jim on numerous. Jim, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'd say that's fair to say.
Thank you. Just for the audience information, it is a joint jurisdiction, and we work cooperatively with DOT whenever we can. And as Larry said, the funding is always an issue.
We're reviewing some of the funding sources that we would have for options in this area, but you have to keep in mind any of the federal money would be for only what's within this right of way. Any of the access roads that head over toward Oak Meadow would not be included in that. That would be local funds only.
Okay, so your motion is made and seconded.
I have
Any
a
other
question.
questions? Go
Can
ahead.
I was just wondering if there's knowing that current businesses there have concerns on getting in and out. I know when I went through there at 7:30 a.m., there was 8 semis backed up waiting to get in. I thought I wasn't going to make it through the intersection myself. But knowing that there's current concerns and knowing that we're trying to market this, pretty quickly to new industry, is there a timeline on work session, or, is there been discussion on how to get that?
We haven't
Fine.
set a date.
Are you suggesting we have a timeline?
Yes, I think it's something we need to discuss and see so we're reassuring our current industries that it's something we're working on, and, keep in communication with them that we enjoy their business at the industrial park and want to see what we can do to alleviate some of their issues.
Absolutely. And what we can do is look at if we want to accelerate the timeline on some of these projects, seeing we're in the middle of our sewer separation, along with many other projects that's coming up. We're very limited on staff time now.
What would be a reasonable timeline if you were to suggest that from your knowledge of the department and staff you have available? Are we talking 6 months? Are we talking?
It would be maybe in the 6 months. That might be reasonable to get that in front of you to see where we're at. I know we've got a lot of stuff we're putting together for the current CIP cycle coming up, along with a lot of work from a regulatory standpoint with the plant, and a lot of work on the separation that has to all fall in line in the next year.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Holly? Okay. Okay, so the motion's on the floor, made and seconded to support the recommendations of the improvements, short-term improvements. You ready to vote? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Burt?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
I want to clarify one thing. The short-term improvements have been made. The items that fell under the responsibility of the DOT, they have completed, and we've completed ours under the short-term as laid out in the summary of the TEEP study.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I want to say thanks for getting those done. So I definitely wasn't trying to imply just, making a timeline so that way the businesses out there know that it's something we're working on and haven't forgot about them.
Sure.
Thank you, Larry.
Thanks.
Okay. All right.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing to accept written or oral comments from the public on the spending plans for the 2018 Justice Assistance Grant Program funds to be obtained from the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Good evening, Chief. You have the floor.
Mayor and Council, this public hearing is a step in the process of accepting funds from the 2018 Justice Assistance Grant Program. The JAG grant does not require a local match. The department's proposed use of the funds is for the purchase of less lethal systems. Basically, it's a pepper ball gun. These federal requirements state that the funds can only be used to supplement the department's budget, not supplant it. The amount of funds we receive from the JAG grant is based on the number of violent crimes we report to the federal government. As in previous years, Walpole County Sheriff's Department is considered a disparate agency within the JAG program. They are considered a disparate agency because they do not qualify for a direct award. Yet the county is responsible for providing criminal justice services such as incarceration for the municipality. Because the Sheriff's Department is considered a disparate agency, the Bureau of Justice Assistance requires that we discuss with the sheriff the sharing of our JAG grant funds. After reviewing the grant with Sheriff Miller, it was agreed that the county would receive 15% of the grant funds, $1,550. The police department would receive 85%, or $8,807, and the police department would administer the grant. The Ottumwa Public Safety Advisory Board met on August 6th, 2018, reviewed the plan, and recommends the JAG grants funds be utilized in the manner outlined in the spending program.
This is a public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience that wants to speak to this item, now's the time to step forward. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Consider accepting the 2018 JAG grant from the Bureau of Justice Assistance in the amount of $10,362. Recommendation: approve submission of the grant over the internet and authorize the mayor to sign any related documents as may be required.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the 2018 Upper Story Housing Pilot Project and the 300 block of East Main Street, CDBG number 18, Ottumwa OT 001.
This is a public meeting, so Tyler, are you going to take it? Step up and.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tyler Baumgart. I'm with Curtis Architecture and Design. I was part of the group that created these documents. We are looking for, with approval at tonight's council, we are looking to release the documents for bid on August 23rd, with bids being brought to the city and it being accepted until 10 a.m. on the 13th of September. With work, assuming everything is in place, work beginning on the 1st of October. Funding for this project has been $500,000 from the Iowa Economic Development CDBG Housing Pilot Fund. This is a new project that was brought to us through Main Street Ottumwa and Area 15. There is also $25,000 from the city of Ottumwa, and then the remaining funds will be from Rippling Waters. Total project is expected to be around $1 million.
This is a public hearing, so if there's anyone that wants to address this item, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 216, 2018, approving the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the 2018 Upper Story Housing Pilot Project and the 300 block of East Main Street, CDBG number 18, OT 001. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 216, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the sale of city-owned property located at 405 Lillian.
Good evening again, Jody.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Sealed bids were accepted for this placarded house until 2 o'clock on August 14th, and we received 3 bids. Donald Sanders submitted the best bid in the amount of $5,100, and we recommend that you accept his bid.
This is a public hearing too, so if there's anyone that wants to address this item, seeing none, I entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 224, 2018, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property located at 405 Lillian to Donald Sanders for the amount of $5,100. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 224, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
Resolution number 217, 2018, authorizing the transfer of $27,086.23 from the Housing Assistance Fund to the 2018 CDBG Upper Story Fund. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 217, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented, Your Honor.
Second.
Thank you, Skip. Good evening, Bob. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. This transfer of funds will allow the city to provide the match for the recently awarded 2018 Ottumwa CDBG Housing Pilot Program.
Any questions for Bob? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Resolution number 218, 2018, appoint members to the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee for the City of Ottumwa Initiative. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 218, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Good evening, Kevin. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. As mentioned earlier, this is to appoint our committee for our CPAC committee, our Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. And spoken to most all of these members or heard from them through email. There's a couple I haven't, but I understood earlier that they were willing to do that and excited about the effort. And so we're just getting underway. And we look forward to all our meetings ahead. And hopefully those members that haven't gotten back to me, just a couple of them, will be pleased to be appointed.
Any questions for Kevin? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Resolution number 219, 2018, approve the purchase of 176 low-floor Champion bus for the Ottumwa Transit Department for the sum of $140,000. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 219, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Good evening, Dave. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor, and Council. Transit will be purchasing a bus outright, no DOT money. It'll be transit fund balance. We have 10 buses. 9 of them were purchased at the same time in 2008, which means all 9 of them are wearing out at virtually the same time. 200 to 240,000 miles, tranny, electrical, you name it. Yeah, it's a problem. It will probably be easily another 2 or 3 years before we get on the list, high enough on the state list to get any of these buses replaced. And naturally, there's no way we're going to replace 9 at one time. I am getting a smaller bus. It's a 176-inch bus. It's 18 passenger. It will have all the amenities of the larger buses. It will be gas instead of diesel. We're finding the diesels have enough problems that we don't need any more of those. And this will be much more efficient. And in the future, when we get, or whoever's here gets changed over to all the small buses, it'll be a very efficient and utilized bus system.
Any questions for Dave? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Resolution number 220, 2018, accept a Federal Aviation Administration grant offer for Airport Improvement Program project number 3197321, 2018 for approximately $6,167,000. Oh, I messed that up. $6,167,167 at the Ottumwa Regional Airport. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 220, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Joni, are you going to comment?
I can. Thank you, Your Honor. This is one of two grants that the Federal Aviation Administration is awarding to the city. This first one is more than $6 million, and it's for the 1331 runway reconstruction improvements at the airport. City staff, along with our airport consultants, have been working for a number of years to seek the approval of the State Department of Transportation and the Federal Aviation Administration for this reconstruction project. This multi-million-dollar project has been let, and work will begin in the spring of 2019, and hopefully it will be done within about 6 months. Staff is recommending approval of the receipt of the grant and the authorization of the mayor to sign the acceptance, as well as any other grant documents on behalf of the city. And I've provided to our city clerk a copy of the complete grant agreement.
Any questions for Joni? Great project. Glad to see it coming to fruition. Okay, if no questions, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 221, 2018, accept a Federal Aviation Administration grant offer for Ottumwa Improvement Program, project number 319-7320, 2018, for approximately $139,719 at the Ottumwa Regional Airport. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 221, 2018.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jody.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, this is the second grant in the amount of $139,000 plus dollars from the FAA. And this is 90% reimbursement for upfront fees that the city council previously approved to be paid out. So we're getting reimbursed by that 90%. And again, the original grant agreement is attached with the city clerk's records. And I would request that council approve that and authorize the mayor to sign.
Any questions for Joni? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 222, 2018, approve equipment purchase for the Bridgeview Center Power Distribution Improvements Project totaling $16,123.96. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 222, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Go ahead, Larry.
This includes the purchase of electrical equipment to provide improved power distribution throughout the Expo Center of Bridgeview. New equipment includes 15 75-foot and 3 100-foot extension cords, 18 30-amp Bentco boxes, and 4 road cases to store the equipment. These purchases will complete the new installation of the overhead electrical distribution system in the Expo Center. Separate requests for bids were sent out to at least 5 known vendors for each desired purchase. Extension cords, the bento boxes, and the road cases. 2 local vendors were made aware of the bidding opportunities but declined to participate. The low bidder for the extension cords is Gear Power Systems from Commerce, California, in the amount of $4,342.50. The low bid for the bento boxes, shackles, and round sling is Clear Wing Products of Milwaukee, Wisconsin for $9,197.46. The low bidder for the road cases is Neilflex Professionals from Minnesota for $2,584. Staff recommends these 3 purchases totaling $16,123.96 plus shipping be approved.
Okay. Any questions for Larry? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 223, 2018, approved change order number 1 and accepting the work as final and complete for the 2017 sidewalk drop program and authorizing final pay request in the amount of $4,864.12 to DC Concrete and Construction. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 223, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry.
This is the 6th contract and consists of the installation of sidewalk drops and detectable warnings at various locations throughout the city of Ottumwa. The completion of these sidewalk drops and detectable warnings will be one step toward compliance with the ADA transition plan. Change order one consists of a decrease of $5,916.22 in adjusted quantities as the as-built quantities and liquidated damages. New contract sum is $100,808.78.
Any questions for Larry? This is part of our annual program to keep up with the ADA, spending about $100,000 a year.
When we entered into this, we did a 10-year agreement with them in order to get through all of the required handicap drops.
Okay. Any other questions for Larry? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
If the council would indulge me, I'd like to move to the K public forum. We have a couple of people who've asked to address the council about an item not on the agenda. Is there a Stu Steffens in the audience? Would you come up and identify yourself, and we'll give you some time to make your comments.
So there's a number of people with me. Can they approach the podium also or no?
Well, let's just take one at a time. There's another one here. I'll call him up in just a moment.
Yes, sir. Mayor, council members, tonight I'd like to address a local contractor, Bridge City Construction, a contractor that has worked on public projects in the past. 2 workers have gone on strike to raise awareness of the issues there. Some items the workers are subject to are 1099 classification. Most all employees are hired under this classification, even though they are not subcontractors. Being a subcontractor, you can set your own hours. You turn in invoices. If you miss a day, you aren't docked. You're your own boss. And under this classification, a lot of the workers don't carry the proper insurance on themselves. They're just there as a worker. So under this, if they have an accident, that can come back to the end user, owner, whoever owns the project. Also, if they're classified as 1099, the company saves money on workers' comp insurance, unemployment insurance, and also no social security is paid on these workers. Lack of training. Workers don't even have the minimum OSHA 10-hour course required by a lot of projects. Some of the workers, when they were told to run forklifts, they said they don't have any forklift experience, no training. They were told to get on it and go slow. And these are like 10,000-pound columns on the metal buildings and stuff. So this is what's going on. No aerial lift training whatsoever either. It's pretty much get on it and learn it. Another issue is the refusal to pay for on-the-job injuries. We got a lawyer in Cedar Rapids to address this, and now this is getting fixed. His response was he did not know about the injuries happening on the job. I have a signed affidavit from this worker that when this, it was a hand injury. He got 5 stitches in his hand. When this happened, he was offered, out of the kindness of Mr. Blunt's heart, he was offered half of the medical bills paid. This worker said, "That's not right. I was injured on your project working for you. It should all be paid." So we have retained a lawyer, and now it looks like the bill will be paid. But I don't know how he can say he didn't know about it when he offered to pay half of it. Others were told injuries would not be reported because it would raise their workers' comp rate. The last issue I want to bring up is workers are required to buy their own PPE, personal protective equipment, safety equipment, belts, hard hats, and safety glasses. This is required by OSHA, and these workers are buying it out of their pockets. They're not making that much money. Belts run anywhere from $200 to $400. If they're not making much money, they're buying the minimum skin of their teeth belts to protect their lives. So this is just some of the issues that there's a few more, but this is what I wanted to bring to light tonight to the council.
Okay.
Mayor, council members, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stu.
I do have handouts. Can I approach and hand out, or how does? Okay,
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. We have a Clark. Is it Pauline? Palmer.
I'd also like to talk about Bridge City construction and some of the things that Stu didn't have a chance to talk about is these workers walked out on strike here on June 15th. The day they walked out was the day they finally started going ahead and trying to fix equipment there. The guys started welding on all the cracks and joints on all the equipment. They've actually had to go out there and fix their own equipment. Two other workers would work on the equipment and try to do what they could. They don't really know what they're doing. No owner's manuals, no guides on how to work on any of their aerial lifts or scissor lifts, and just trying to figure it out. Trial and error, replacing parts to make stuff kind of work and bypassing safety switches to make it work as well. Workers, when they were there, faced threats and intimidation, just not from from a lead man, but also from the two owners, Sean Blunt and Jason Blunt. Workers were told not to talk to us, not to do anything with any of us, along with racism from the lead men, foremen, and owners. Workers had to buy their own clock in and clock out keys. And this is something that they tracked down to 100th of a second. They weren't issued these keys at first. And if they lost them, they had to replace them again. They were also set at different pay scales for different jobs that they performed on the job. So they'd have to clock out under X and then have to clock back in under Y, just depending on what they were doing that day. As soon as the workers have gone out on strike, they have started to improve some of these conditions. Now there's water on the jobs. There is, like I said, the lifts are starting to be fixed, and all we're doing is trying to keep handing out information and keep bringing some of these serious issues to light. That's about it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Council and Mayor.
Any comments, Joni, or do you want to look at the material that was handed out? And
I'll review it and let you know.
Okay.
If there's any questions, please have an email on the back, Tri-State Workers Coalition at gmail.com. If you'd like to get a hold of us on there, just do it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any communications from council members? Anything you want to bring up we should pay attention to or be thinking about?
Your Honor, I got one issue here I want to mention. It come to my attention, I think all too often we don't give folks in our community when they come to our attention enough credit. There's certainly a lot of unknown folks in our community who do good things every day. And I think it's up to a lot of us up here that if we do hear those folks, that we do give them that recognition they deserve. And I was approached by a person the other day, and she told me a story of an elderly lady who lives in our Westgate Towers. Her name is Arlene Decker, and she's 94 years old. And since 2007, she's been making baby blankets and armbands for kids who are less fortunate than some of ours in our community. And she's made over 15,000 of them for children with medical issues in Central America. And she's a woman of our community who's never been asked to do this. She's done it for years. She's never been paid for it. And I think it's a great thing. So tonight I want to recognize her. And on behalf of the City Council, I just want to recognize her as an outstanding Ottumwa citizen. I think she deserves this recognition. And I think we're all up here, I can speak for most of us, privileged to have her in our community. So I just wanted to have a shout out for Miss Arlene Decker of the Westgate Towers. Thank you for what you do. And hopefully you have many years to continue doing that. So thank you.
Very nice, Matt. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Looking out over the audience, I also see another person who does a lot of volunteer work for our community and has been very active in Main Street. And Connie, if you would just stand up, we recognize you, the beautiful flowers, both downtown, Bridgeview. I've seen her many mornings with her, I don't know, hatchback with the water in the back, the water jugs. And she does it all volunteer and free gratis to the city and the community, and has been a great volunteer. So we want to recognize you too. Thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you.
A couple items. We did meet with our Ottumwa Police Department, and again, I want to say publicly how proud we were of the work they did in our recent shooting episode here in town. I was at a League of Cities meeting when I heard from a city manager or another community how proud he was of our police performance, and that they had done a great job in handling the situation and giving updates to the public. So I did, on behalf of the council, thank our policemen and law enforcement. It was a great effort, and certainly took a situation that could have gotten really bad and ugly and handled it very well. So thank you again, Chief, and policemen who put their life on the line every day. Several of us from the city attended a meeting at Bridgeview with the FEMA people to talk about our levee system, and I thought our city was well represented by our Public Works Department. And again, people just don't pay attention to the levee. It's just there, but we do have to meet certain state and federal standards, and it was good to see that we're in compliance and doing a lot of good work, and our staff was very knowledgeable. On August 16th, I had a chance to meet with the owners of CNC Manufacturing. This was an effort to bring some more industry to our airport. And our city airport supervisor, Chris Cobbler, did a great job of working with CNC. And I think we're going to be able to use the building for some other industry that hasn't been utilized before. So we're really happy about that. Friday, Andy Morris and I attended the mid-size city meeting. Mid-size are cities 10,000 to 50,000 in Altoona. We were addressed by Senator Grassley and had a chance to interact with him. But equally important, we had a chance to visit with Erin Mullinex, who does a lot of statistical work for the League of Cities. And she is sending us some new slides on taxation and levies and just finance issues that they have been working with a number of cities for quite some time. And then lastly, Andy and I and Kevin and Sharon and a few other folks had the opportunity today to visit with the owners of the Quincy Mall and had a great discussion with them. And we are going to explore some ideas for how to repurpose the mall and how we can take advantage of the great space that's there. So nothing to report tonight, but just wanted you to know that we are actively looking for ways that we can utilize that space and come up with some new and repurposed ideas. So Andy, anything else you want to add? Anything else from the council? Okay.
I got one item. 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was brought to the council's attention on some deterioration of the ball fields at 3463. I guess my question is, did anybody do any follow-up on that and find out whose responsibility it was and what all the problems are over there?
Which ball field?
3463, the big intersection.
Yeah, adult softball, yes.
Under the union, under the contract with that organization, they're responsible for maintenance of that facility.
Has anybody told them that?
It's in their agreement they signed, so we assume they read it and understood it.
I know, Mr. Mayor, that was a topic that we covered with them last year.
Yeah.
In fact, if I don't want to put Mr. Ratchey on the spot, but I believe even we sent a copy of that contract to them.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm thinking is if it's not repaired and it continues to fall apart and they decide not to use that ball field, you know who's going to have to pay for fixing it up.
Yeah, the Adult Softball Association signed a lease agreement with the city earlier this year for 1.5 years. So they are responsible for all the maintenance and operations of that facility. But you're right, those facilities are deteriorating. And with the Riverfront Renaissance Plan, those facilities are due to be replaced. So that's the real solution, is build 2 or 3 brand new adult softball fields, build them properly, 300-foot fences with all the proper amenities, and then we'll solve the problem.
But do you think that's going to happen, and when?
I can't predict when, but it really needs to be done soon rather than pouring money into the existing facilities, which really are too small, inadequate, weren't built properly in the first place. So why not build new fields to bring more people into town for tournaments, leagues, and expand adult softball?
Okay, thank you.
I think just to add to that, both for Gene and Councilman Stevens, we were informed today that the Pinnacle organization that is doing the sports complex study has completed their report, and we should get a copy of that next week. And I think it really addresses the question you're raising about what kind of facilities do we need for all of our sports, soccer, baseball, you name it, tennis, basketball. And in that regard, I hope we will have a chance to have some discussion in future meetings about, I was approached by 2 of the active members of the Ottumwa Tennis League about the condition of the Stags tennis courts. And after doing a visual inspection, I certainly understand their issue. So we may want to take a look at that, and that could be figured into this, again, the complex study, because I think we've got some issues there that we need to take care of, or they're only going to get worse. So.
Likewise, on the deer hunting ordinance that was brought up here tonight, is someone going to check into that and offer possible solutions, or what's going to happen there?
Well, Councilman, are there specific solutions you have in mind?
Well, maybe increase the distance and some of the things that Cam suggested. But I don't know whether they'll work or not. That's why probably the police chief would know more about that. But I think somebody needs to investigate it and get an answer back, is what I'm trying to say.
Do we know how many complaints we have against the deer policy or ordinance? I don't have any other than the one I heard of tonight. Has anybody else received any complaints from the other 25,000 people living in this area?
I'm not aware of any complaints I've not received, and I do log complaints at the office.
Okay.
And I think we do have an ordinance on the books right now, so.
That's correct. I guess if you want to get together and have a committee of some sort, it seems to me that one complaint, we're never going to keep everybody in town happy. But if you want us to get together a committee, or maybe a couple council members and myself, Sergeant Blake Leffler's in charge of the deer program. And I don't know that he's received any complaints other than one from Cam, but we can meet and discuss it and change the ordinance. I'm guessing that you're going to have more complaints from the deer hunters coming in that have been using the same ordinance for years. But excuse me, my allergies are bad tonight. If you want to have a committee, I'm more than willing to meet and discuss changing the ordinance.
I'm not trying to hang additional work on you, a pile of work. But I think when a citizen asks a question, they deserve an answer, whether it's what they want to hear or don't want to hear. I don't think we should just leave it hanging and not say anything at all.
This was addressed last year, and I expected this would come up again this year. But it's basically what you guys want to do. I can come up with, I can meet with Cam, or Cam can just write down how he wants the ordinance changed, and then I will present it to you and see if you want to change the ordinance.
I think it might be worth having a discussion with him, see if there's any merit to what he wants. And I agree, we can't change policy for one person unless it's really serious that would cause a matter of life and death. So I think if you would meet with him and you'd report back at some future date, that would be sufficient.
Okay, so I'll meet with Cam, and he can write up how he wants the ordinance changed, and then I'll bring it back to council.
That'd be fine. Thank you, Chief. Any other business? Not, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
I have 7:41.
I'll check with others. And bring back some.